Do you have questions in your mind about how good your leadership skills really are and how others see you? Do you walk out of meetings wondering whether or not you really performed your best, or was there something lacking? When you present, is the feedback good but not great, even if the information in those presentations are solid? And worst of all, do you really think a lot about the future and yourself as a leader? The secret is that leadership is about what people perceive and what they see in you. And they do this most often in the realm of communication, specifically in how you present. Because deep down, you know the truth. The people who are chosen to lead and are groomed for leadership are not always the smartest, but they're the ones that someone can trust to lead. And how do most people judge somebody's ability to lead? By what they see. And what they most often see is how you communicate, and specifically how you communicate using presentations in important business meetings where decisions are made. And this is exactly what this video is about. I'm John Firth, and I coach CEOs and owners of small and medium-sized businesses, as well as senior executives, on how to increase their performance, their effectiveness, and their leadership. From the minute I started doing my MBA, through being a strategy consultant and eventually a CEO and president, the form of excellence in communication was drilled into me. Get to the point. Make sure you keep the outcomes front of mind and make sure that all the points line up for decision. Don't confuse information for insight. After years of presenting to CEOs, boards, and leadership teams, I learned something very important. Those who are the busiest and work the hardest to prepare a professional presentation, most people trusted the least. And why? Because they were all about looking intelligent and sounding good instead of preparing people for decisions. Because they overwhelmed people with information instead of what they needed to make good decisions. That's the difference between sounding intelligent and being a leader. You know the presentation. Pivot tables, lots of data, fancy looking charts, too many words on the page, a use of color as if somebody had dove into somebody's crayon box and used every possible color under the sun. And underneath it all is a fear that somebody's going to ask you a difficult question or trip you up on your facts. But executive audiences aren't looking for lots of information. They're looking for clarity. They're not interested in saying, oh, this is somebody who works hard. They're interested in thinking, this person understands the decision we have to make. That is an entirely different standard. Senior leaders are primed to ask three questions. What matters? Why does it matter? And what should we do about it? That's it. If your presentation doesn't answer those questions quickly, then you start seeing drift and energy leave the room. Eyes glaze over. Telephones come out, people start doodling on the edges of their notebooks. You've lost the room and you've lost their confidence. I learned this when I was doing a massive project for the European Commission in all 12, at that point, 12 member states. I had been preparing decision documents under the tutelage of a senior partner at the firm. And I got into my head once that a meeting was going to be more about me expounding on something new, a new idea. And I did the research and I prepared wonderful slides. But what happened was that I started presenting information. It was not the kind of presentation they were used to, and about halfway through, the senior executive at the commission who was overseeing the project stopped me and wouldn't let me continue. I was extremely embarrassed, but the lesson was clear. I was meandering. I was only providing random thoughts. I wasn't giving it a dramatic arc. I wasn't thinking of the outcome that I wanted to have from them. I wasn't thinking of the decision that they had to make in terms of what I was saying, and it fell flat. And with that, I made sure I never had that happen again, and I have to safely say my presentation was some of the best that I often saw given. And by the way, if you like these videos about strategy, leadership, and holding power within organizations, then hit the subscribe button. Because most people spend time learning technical skills, but it's the very few that understand leadership that carry the day. So storytelling is key to mankind's existence. As Donald Miller says, the proponent of storybook marketing, we tell stories in order to survive. And that is very true in all facets of life, in all aspects of life, and none more so than in business. In business, we tell stories because that's the way leaders communicate. That's the way we persuade people to do things. It's the way we bring up decisions. And there are 4 parts to a business storybook. There's the situation of a firm, of a product, of an employee, whatever. That's the situation. And then there's the complication. Complication like a product no longer finds a market, it's losing money, a business line is starting up. There's some complication, a change. And then there's the decision. What do we do to resolve this issue or to take advantage of an opportunity? And then, of course, what is the outcome if we make this decision? And very often there may be several decisions, several paths that can be taken, and it's the outcome that really counts. What is the outcome if we take this decision or others? We build this in a dramatic arc. I always say that I planted in aha moments to keep the audience with me, keep them on the edge of their seats, if you will. It's not a Hollywood film, but it's not constructed that dissimilar, that different. So before you give your next presentation, ask yourself this: do I want to be known as the smart guy, the guy with all the facts and information, or do I want to be known as the guy who makes the decisions, who prepares decisions? Because in leadership, that's the difference between being seen as a support staff and being a true leader.